It was an ordinary Friday evening when my office hosted its annual party, the kind of event everyone talked about for weeks, but few genuinely looked forward to. I wasn't particularly excited about it either. After all, the idea of forced small talk and plastered smiles at these types of gatherings always felt like a chore. But that night felt different. It had been a long, exhausting week at work, and something about the festive mood in the air felt like a breath of fresh air. The venue was a well-lit banquet hall, adorned with sparkling lights and elegantly arranged tables that exuded sophistication. The music pulsed at just the right volume, loud enough to energize the room without drowning conversations, and the drinks were flowing freely. I found myself in a surprisingly good mood, catching up with old colleagues and mingling with people I hadn't spoken to in ages. Still, despite the laughter and the easy atmosphere, a strange feeling lingered beneath the surface, as if something unexpected was on the horizon. I hadn't noticed him at first. There was no reason to. He was just a waiter, one of many drifting through the crowd with trays of drinks and hors d'oeuvres. But he was tall, with sharp features and an air of mystery that made him stand out once you really looked. He moved with effortless grace, weaving through the party with quiet confidence. He didn't draw attention, yet when our eyes met across the room, something shifted. I felt it, a sudden jolt of electricity that made my breath catch. I tried to shake the feeling and went back to chatting with a friend. As the evening wore on, with a few more drinks and much-needed laughter under my belt, I eventually excused myself to use the bathroom. The venue's bathrooms were luxurious, with sleek finishes and soft lighting. As I stepped into the quiet hallway, I noticed how eerily silent everything felt. The music from the party was muffled now, distant. The overhead lights flickered subtly, casting fleeting shadows that made the space feel off, like the calm before a storm. I brushed the feeling aside and pushed the restroom door open. That's when it happened. I was at the sink, washing my hands and staring at my reflection in the mirror, when I heard the door creak open behind me. I turned, expecting to see another partygoer looking for a break from the noise and crowd. But it was him, the waiter. He stood in the doorway, his eyes locked on mine. The air instantly thickened with tension. He didn't speak. He just stood there, like he was waiting for me, maybe. "Can I help you?" I asked, forcing casualness into my voice, though I felt my heartbeat pick up. There was no logical reason to be nervous, yet my pulse quickened. I instinctively took a step back toward the sink, suddenly alert. Still, he said nothing. Instead, he stepped forward slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. For a split second, I wondered if I should say something more, ask him to leave, or even call out. But I couldn't move. There was something in the air, something that held me captive. He was close now, just a few feet from me. His posture was calm but powerful, exuding a quiet, almost dangerous confidence. "I couldn't help but notice you earlier," he said at last, his voice smooth like velvet. His words made my breath hitch. Was he flirting? Or was there something else hidden beneath his tone? Before I could process it, he stepped closer, so close that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. I didn't move. Part of me wanted to step back, to break whatever spell was being cast, but I stood frozen. "I've been watching you all night," he continued, his voice slow, steady. "There's something about you I can't quite figure out. Something different." My pulse thundered in my ears. I couldn't think of a response. I didn't know what he meant, or why it felt so impossible to look away. And then he reached out. His hand brushed lightly against mine. The touch was feather-light, yet it sent a jolt through my entire body. The air between us thickened, charged. "Do you trust me?" he asked, his voice now a whisper. I wanted to speak, but all I could do was nod. My mind screamed at me to step away, to leave the restroom and pretend none of this was happening. But my body refused to move. He leaned in, his lips only inches from mine. I could feel his breath, the heat of it culling against my skin. I was completely still, consumed by the surreal intimacy of the moment. Just as I thought he might kiss me, footsteps echoed down the hallway. He stepped back abruptly. I blinked, breathless, disoriented. What had just happened? Was that a moment of passion, or something far more dangerous? "Maybe next time," he said with a knowing grin, his eyes dancing with mischief and something else I couldn't name. Then he turned and disappeared down the hallway, vanishing into the shadows. I stood there, heart racing, mind spinning. Was it real? Just a fleeting spark of attraction? Or was something deeper at play? The thrill of that moment stayed with me long after I returned to the party. Something inside me had shifted. I couldn't stop thinking about him, the mysterious stranger who had entered my life in a whisper and left me breathless. In the days that followed, everything else felt strangely dull. I tried to forget. It was just a brief encounter in a bathroom at an office party, I told myself. Nothing more. But each time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, felt his hand, heard his voice. I started scanning rooms at work, half hoping, half dreading I'd see him again. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that maybe I had imagined it all. A harmless flirtation, a trick of the atmosphere. And then, a week later, I saw him again. I was in the break room, sipping coffee and scrolling through emails, when a voice behind me said, "Fancy seeing you here." I turned. There he was, leaning casually against the doorframe, his eyes fixed on mine with that same intense, unreadable look. I froze. Was this real? "Hey," I managed to say, trying not to sound shaken. I set my coffee cup down, my hands slightly trembling. "I was just thinking about you," he said with a smile. His tone was light, but there was something beneath it, something more. "Really?" I asked. I wasn't sure if I should feel flattered or alarmed. "Why?" He tilted his head, amusement flickering in his eyes. "You left in quite a rush last time. I didn't get to finish our conversation." I flushed. What was I supposed to say to that? That I'd been thinking about him every day since? That his presence haunted my thoughts? "I didn't expect to see you here," I said, masking my nerves with a smile. "I've got my reasons," he replied, his eyes darkening. "I'm not just a waiter." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "I'm not just some guy who serves drinks at parties," he said, voice low, deliberate. "I've been watching you. There's something about you I can't ignore. You're not like the others." His words stirred something inside me, a mix of intrigue and unease. "What do you mean?" I asked again, my voice softer now. He smiled, but it was a mysterious smile, a dangerous one. "Maybe we should get to know each other better." My heart skipped. The way he said it. It was an invitation, one filled with risk, with potential. Just as I opened my mouth to respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, frowned, and answered curtly. "I'll be there in 5 minutes." He hung up and turned back to me. "Duty calls," he said, a glint of something unreadable in his eyes. "But I'll be back. And when I am, I expect you to be ready to answer some questions." And just like that, he was gone. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't focus, couldn't stop wondering about him. Who was he really? What did he want from me? Then, exactly a week later, I got a message from an unknown number. My heart raced. I opened it. "I told you I'd be back. Let's finish our conversation. Tonight, 7 p.m. Don't be late." I stared at the screen. My mind was screaming with questions. Should I go? Should I ignore it? But something deep inside me already knew the answer. That evening, I got ready, unsure of what I was walking into, but certain of one thing. This was only the beginning. The city had begun to hum with night as I stepped out, the breeze brushing against my skin like a whisper. I checked the message again. 700 p.m. Don't be late. There was no address, no explanation, just a time and a promise. And somehow, I knew exactly where to go. The cafe on 9th Street. It wasn't a place I'd been to often, but it lingered in memory like a half-forgotten dream. Dim lights, old jazz, red velvet booths, and the scent of roasted coffee beans that never seemed to fade. A place meant for secrets. I arrived 5 minutes early. The bell over the door chimed softly as I stepped inside. A few patrons were scattered across the room, each lost in their own world. But he wasn't there. Or so I thought. I took a seat at the corner booth, the one shadowed just enough to feel hidden. My eyes flicked to the entrance every few seconds. My heartbeat, steady but elevated, matched the quiet rhythm of the background music. Then I noticed the waitress. She walked over. No notepad, no smile, just a single sentence. "He said you'd want tea. Black. No sugar." My breath caught in my throat. I didn't ask how she knew. I didn't want to. She placed the cup gently in front of me and walked away. I stared at the steam curling up from the porcelain. He was here, or had been. Watching. Testing. I wasn't sure anymore. The silence of the place felt thick, like words unsaid were hanging in the air. Just as I began to wonder if I'd been stood up, a folded napkin appeared beside my cup. I hadn't seen anyone place it there. I picked it up with trembling fingers and unfolded it. 3 words, handwritten in a neat, slanted script. Back entrance. Now. I hesitated, heart thudding. I glanced around. No one was looking at me. Or maybe they were, and I just couldn't see it. I rose, legs unsteady beneath me, and made my way to the back of the cafe. The hallway narrowed, dimly lit, and lined with old photographs. The exit door creaked slightly as I pushed it open. He was there, leaning against the wall, half in shadow, cigarette between his fingers, his eyes already on me, as though he'd known the exact second I would appear. "You came," he said, voice low. "I shouldn't have," I replied, though I wasn't sure I meant it. He smiled, not wide, not warm, but there was something in it. Something like regret or warning. "I told you I'm not just a waiter. I figured that out." He stepped closer, and this time I didn't move away. The scent of smoke and something darker clung to him. Danger, but not the reckless kind. The deliberate kind. The kind that knows exactly how much of a line to cross without leaving a trace. "There are things I want to tell you," he said, "but if I do, you'll be part of something you can't walk away from." I opened my mouth to speak, but he gently pressed a finger to my lips, silencing me. "Not yet. Tonight, I need you to listen. No questions. No fear." He reached into his coat pocket and handed me a small, unmarked envelope. I stared at it, unsure if I should take it. "What is it?" I asked anyway. "Answers," he said, "but only some, and only if you're ready." My fingers closed around it, the weight of the paper heavier than it should have been. Something had changed, not just in the air, but in me. "I'll find you again," he said, stepping back into the shadows, "when I know you're ready to see more." And with that, he was gone. No sound, no trace, just the echo of his presence lingering like smoke in my lungs. I looked down at the envelope. My hands were trembling, but I didn't let go. I didn't open the envelope right away. For hours, it sat untouched on my kitchen table, daring me, taunting me. Something about it felt alive, like it pulsed with the potential to change everything. Part of me feared that once I opened it, there would be no turning back. But another part, the louder part, needed to know. When I finally slid my finger beneath the seal, the paper made the softest sound. Inside was a single photograph and a typed note. The photo was old, slightly worn around the edges. In it, he stood beside a woman, not smiling, but not unhappy either. They looked connected, like people bound by something more than just affection. The note was brief. Her name was Elise. She disappeared 3 years ago. I've been trying to find the truth ever since. You remind me of her not in how you look, but in how you see the world. And that's dangerous for you. And for me. My breath caught. He had lost someone. No, he had been haunted by someone. And now, somehow, I'd stepped into the crosshairs of that same haunting. Days passed. Then, a week. He didn't return. Not to the cafe. Not to the office. Not to my world. I tried to forget. I tried to bury it beneath deadlines and errands and the soft noise of everyday life. But none of it worked. Because I knew something now, something most people never learn, that our lives are often just one quiet step away from the extraordinary or the dangerous. It was a Friday again, exactly 2 weeks since the party, when I found the second note. It had been slipped under my door, just like the first envelope. One last time. Rooftop. Midnight. Come alone. No signature. Just those 7 words. I don't know why I didn't hesitate. Maybe I should have. But I didn't. The rooftop was quiet. Wind tugged at my coat. The city lights below flickered like dying stars. I stood there alone for a few minutes before I felt the shift, that subtle change in the air that told me I was no longer alone. He stepped out of the darkness, coat trailing slightly behind him, the city glow casting shadows across his face. You came, he said again, just like before. So did you, I replied. For a moment, we just stood there, the silence between us thick with everything that had gone unsaid. I didn't lie, he said at last. About Elise. She trusted the wrong person. So did I. And she paid for it. What happened to her? He looked at me then, something raw behind his eyes. She disappeared. No trace. No body. No goodbyes. Just gone. And I've been chasing ghosts ever since. The wind picked up, brushing against us like the whisper of something long dead. I thought maybe you were one of them, he added. A trap. A test. But you weren't. I stepped closer, the city noise now just a murmur in the distance. Why me? I asked. He smiled faintly. Because when I looked at you, I didn't see a stranger. I saw someone who could survive the fall. I didn't understand it fully. Maybe I never would. But there was a moment between us then, fragile, fleeting, where all the questions and fears fell away. He reached into his coat and handed me something, a small silver pendant, old, engraved with a name I didn't recognize. Elise wore this the night she vanished, he said. I found it in a place she never should have been. Why give it to me? Because I'm done chasing shadows. But maybe, if you keep it, she won't be forgotten. And just like that, he turned and walked away. This time, I didn't follow. I stood on the rooftop for a long time after he disappeared, clutching the pendant in my hand. The metal was cold, but there was warmth somewhere beneath it, memory, perhaps. or meaning. I never saw him again. Not in the office. Not in the cafe. Not in the places where ghosts and strangers pass each other in silence. But every now and then, I catch myself staring at the pendant, remembering the feeling of that night, of the unknown brushing against the edge of my life. It wasn't love. Not quite. And it wasn't a dream either. It was something else. Something I still can't name. But I know this. Some encounters aren't meant to last. They're meant to wake you up. And once they do, nothing is ever quite the same again.